Rule 34, the Gaming Roundtable. Pull up a chair if you're able. That's right, it's Sunday, and happy Sunday to you all. I'm drinking no beer today, as a matter of fact, but I'm having a little Dr. Pepper, just as good, and not as bad for you anyway. But anyway, today's episode is called Durability and Genre, and I am playing a game on PlayStation 4 by Grasshopper Manufacturer, which is Suda51, and of course Suda51 is a celebrated game designer. And this is called Let It Die. It is a free-to-play game. It's about 42 plus gigs, and it's a fully realized game. I'm actually surprised this game is free to play, even though there is a microtransaction thing going on with it. And later on, you'll probably hit a brick wall sooner or later. But for right now, I'm enjoying it because it's sort of like Grasshopper's take on the Souls or Dark Souls style franchise. That little brain thing is how you level up, and those little holes in me is where hoses go inside of you, and it's just a really weird game. I got this bat I'm using, and I've got this handheld like buzzsaw that you can kill people with, and there's finishers, and it's a really fun and interesting game, and I've actually been enjoying it quite a bit. And let's go up to this next area. Now, this particular episode, it's called Durability and Genre, but this is more or less because I want to talk a little bit about the weapon systems that have some people, not everybody, but some critics and people and gamers up in arms over Zelda Breath of the Wild. You know, that wonderful 10 out of 10 game, and a few critics did not give it a 10 out of 10 because of a few glaring omissions or systems that they thought should have been in the game. Zelda has a weapon durability system in play. And that weapon durability system, unfortunately, you can have like a steel sword and attack somebody, or a creature, 5-6 times, and then it breaks. And there is no repair system in place. There is no anything like that in place to repair said weapon. Now, I hear later on that it's that the game has, like, in the later levels where you get better weapons, better stuff, or later on down the road in the game, it's not as a problem, but it's still there. And I kept thinking about this, and I was watching some people, YouTube channels talk about this. Even Angry Joe, who gave the game a 9 out of 10, also didn't like the fact that the durability was there. Jim Sterling, which is the most critical of the bunch, gave it a 7 out of 10, and he did make a good valid point. And one of those points was, if I have a steel sword, it kind of breaks my immersion if I attack 5 skeletons with it and it shatters into oblivion and it's gone forever. And I kept thinking about this because it made me think about it while I was playing Let It Die. Because Let It Die also has a weapon durability system in place. And you lose durability when you hit stuff and attack them. And that's one of the things that this game does. And it doesn't. And you also cannot repair said system, said weapon. There's no option to repair. Like Zelda, and this game drops a shitload of weapons. You can have like 6 equipped at any given time. You can switch to on the fly on your right and left hand using the D-pad. Now, having said that though, this game's basic system is once you have the blueprint for said weapon, which I do, and I have the materials which you collect, and you go back to your home base where I was just at, or the staging point, and you talk to this weapons dealer guy, you can actually have him R&D that weapon, and the weapon will go to +2, +3, +4, and so on and so forth, and it gets stronger and stronger, so like it has a better durability as it goes. It takes a while, but it's there, and that's the way that they mitigated that system of damaging and whatnot. Level 22 there. And that's one of the things that I find kind of fascinating, that they went about that way. Now, Zelda does not do this. Zelda, when I was thinking about it, and what I've watched on videos and gameplay and watched extensively, is that Zelda, it's almost like Nintendo either intended one or two things. And one of that thing was, will allow you to switch to different weapons while you're fighting combat-wise. So, 2 hits with your axe, and then jump to your sword, and then jump to a spear, and then finish them off with a bow, or something along that lines. But what I've also been gathering from critics and reviewers is that it's not like you can switch, between weapons like easily or like where it's like you can combo like that. So that makes me it begs to wonder to me, like, oh, it's kind of strange that they decided to do that, to go that route. And maybe that's, I don't know the decision behind that. I don't know if they were like, hey, people love open world games, they love loot systems, they just do. So maybe that's what they were trying to do, is, hey, we're gonna give them a bunch of loot and have fun with it. And that's basically maybe that's what they were trying to create. I don't know that for sure. I'm not, like I said, I don't know anything about, I don't know what Nintendo's doing, if that's what they were originally intended. To be honest with you, having not played the game, but watched much extensively, I'm kind of cut from that old school RPG, way where it's like, hey, if I got a really cool spear, I want to use the spear. I don't want to, like, hit 10 enemies and then I lose that spear. Especially if I've been grinding or farming a lot of monsters, like, especially in the later game, and all of a sudden now, boom, I lose my weapon after I spent 3 hours waiting for this monster to drop it. I mean, that's kind of a shithill thing to do, especially if you have no systems in place whatsoever to repair anything. And that's where, or like this game with the durability, where you just research and develop it more, and you can have, and that weapon will become more durable as time goes on. It just seems like a strange design choice. But I think where the critics are coming from, though, is you have to remember that Zelda Breath of the Wild has changed genre. It's no longer an action-adventure game. The Zelda series has always been more or less an action-adventure game. Worlds were kind of hub-based in a way, but they weren't really open-ended. And this game now is an open-world RPG. And when you get into it, when you think about that, that immediately makes people who have played it compare it to Skyrim, Elder Scrolls Online, Oblivion, the Two Worlds series, a variety of action RPGs, including Dragon's Dogma, and in any game that's basically like that. And I think it's funny that rightfully so, that some critics and some people are going to be comparing it. Sorry guys, I lost my microphone there for a second. That some people are going to compare it to that, and rightfully so, because now Zelda is an action, as an open world RPG, right? And that's where the immediate comparisons come into play. It's very similar to games that try to emulate other games. It's games that are very similar to Resident Evil, was always compared to such. A military shooter comes out, instantly compared to, Call of Duty and Battlefield, or most of the time Call of Duty. So, again, people are used to a certain way games flow is and how it's designed. If I pick up, if I have a steel two-handed sword in Skyrim, I never have to worry about it breaking. Yes, there's durability issues in Oblivion, but again, it takes a long time for that weapon to break down. It's a steel sword. It's not going to break easy, or quickly, unless it's in the Zelda game, where, like, it seems like your weapons are made of cotton candy and paper and held together with duct tape and hope. And this is where I myself would have a problem with that said system. Hey, thanks for dropping 30 weapons, but maybe I don't need all that, or would like to use all that, and that's kind of where I'm at with it when it comes to that. And because it switched genres, because it's switched its genre up, that's where you have to look at it from that point of view. it's a different game now, and because it's a different game, you know, it's going to be compared, of course, to said games of the same genre. Now, interestingly enough, another game that decided to change its formula was the Toukiden series. This year, Toukiden 2 came out. It's an excellent game, and it's also an open world game. But where it differentiates is the fact that that's the only thing that changed about it. The weapon systems and the way that you fight monsters and get their parts and purify them, and then you use said materials to make weapons and armor. There is no leveling system in the game. There's not. Your health points is really not really your health points per se. It's based around how strong your armor is. And even though, yes, it's changed to an open world setting, the entire game is still Monster Hunter style through and through. And so it didn't really change too much. Your character does not level up. You do not have skill trees. Weapons are built. They're not found. There is no loot per se outside of materials. That's it. And so again, even when you play Toukiden 2, and even though I love the fact it's in this open world setting, it still feels pretty much like it always has, with a few new improvements in combat and things like that. But that's what it is. And I think it's interesting to see a game come out that is where Zelda, though, however, changed much of the way the game plays. I mean, you can swim and you can underwater and you can do all this stuff that you see in games like Skyrim and, like I was mentioning earlier, Dragon's Dogma and all that stuff. Oh, kill him real fast. And that's something that, where these comparisons are going to be coming from. And again, only the harshest of critics, it seems like, has actually has a big problem with it. Even Angry Joe, who gave it a 9 out of 10, said the same thing. He thought the weapon durability was a little ridiculous and shouldn't have been done the way it's done. And I agree with him, and I agree with Jim Sterling. It does kind of break that immersion if I have this really badass, axe, and the head of it breaks within a hit or two, and that's where I'm kind of like at with it. You gotta watch these guys. Hold on. Sorry, my stamina was done. Anyway, so, and that's kind of how I kind of feel about the game overall, is the fact that once you change that genre over, it's going to get those people out there that say, hey, now because it's kind of like Skyrim, and a lot of people are comparing Breath of the Wild to Skyrim. I know Skyrim's name gets thrown out a lot, but it was one of the recent games from last gen and remastered now because people spent 300, 400, 500, 600 hours in there. There's people even lumping it in the same with Witcher 3, which again, Witcher 3 is open world, and Witcher 3 is like one of the best RPGs, and again, it's going to have that comparison because you changed that formula, right? And I think the funny thing is the durability issue could be patched. Nintendo could totally patch the game and have it to where the weapons take a long time to break, or even put some kind of repair system in there so people who are like, hey, my Link wields this really badass axe or a really cool bow staff or whatever, I want to use that. That's going to be my weapon of choice. But if it breaks after 3 hits, then I got to go to a sword, then I got to go to an axe, then I got to... it's almost like Reaper, I throw my guns away and here's some new guns kind of thing, because they're done. And I feel like that Nintendo, however, is not going to change anything, because Nintendo is a great company when it comes to how they make their games. They really have been at it for a long time. When they make a game, it's always rock solid. But they're also really up their ass about their product and their character. You know, this is a franchise thing for them, and they're not going to change it because most people are not really complaining about the durability, even though they may not like it. But everything else is so good that, you know, they're not really like saying, hey, it should change. In a way, it would be nice if Zelda did some kind of patch or did something cool, you know, like that. But they're just not going to do that. And, you know, which I wish they kind of would, because I think you would have more of these more hardcore critics, you know, would probably review it and basically say, hey, this is I'm going to change my review score and give it the extra 2 or 3 points it deserves. But Nintendo's not going to patch it. It's not going to happen. You're going to have this game where you get hundreds and hundreds of weapons and it never changes, and your durability, and you're fucked. At first, when I was playing Let It Die here, I had a problem with the durability because stuff breaks so easy. But as I realized that it had a system in place for research and development, and you can make the weapon better and stronger and better, I thought, well, that's great, because that mitigates that. You can't repair it per se, but you can make it better. And that's a really cool thing in my book. And so, like, I'm really glad that that's in there, you know. Just grabbing at the cell. And it's just been like one of those, you know, games that, you know, weapon durability and armor durability can be handled rightly, where either you have a smith and you can repair your stuff, or B, you have something you can carry that repairs said stuff, or D, you have this system like this in place where you get whatever thing to make it better and stronger. But if you just have a system in place that, hey, now you gotta use a different weapon, you know, and there's no real reason or rhyme or reason to it, then I think Zelda, that was poorly implemented on Nintendo's part. You know, your rest of your game looks incredible and fantastic, but if you have this system in place and you don't give any explanation to why you made it that way, hey, we wanted to do it to where, hey, we wanted to give you bunches of weapons and let you try different stuff on the fly and just have fun with switching your stuff up, that would be great. But none of that was said. And so it would be nice to see them patch it, but they're not going to, unfortunately. I just know how they operate. Anyway, and that's where it really boils down to, is as soon as Zelda changed into a different genre and it became an open world RPG, then that's where it's going to immediately be compared to those other games in the same genre. And what we're used to in that genre is we don't have to worry about these cool weapons we get breaking, or armor that's breaking on us constantly. And that's, I think, where Nintendo should have looked at those other games and said, how are they doing this, right? But who knows? Maybe that won't be, and if they do another Zelda game, which they probably will, since this is selling like gangbusters and they're going to make a lot of money off of it and have so far, maybe they'll make another one and that won't be the case. But until then, you know, that whole weapon issue where it just breaks and you just got to deal with it, you know, I find to be unacceptable in an open world RPG. It's just, that's the case. It's not much different from Final Fantasy Lightning Returns, which also went a more open world route, but they kind of jacked it up, you know, by putting the time limit in there, and so you didn't have a whole lot of time to explore, and that's the problem. When you put a constraint on stuff. Because one of the things that they had mentioned in designing that Lightning Returns was, this is a statement from the lead developer or the lead designer. He stated, we looked at games like Skyrim, Dark Souls. I mean, he mentioned like all these different role-play games. Like, wow, they're taking cues from these other successful role-play games. They even mentioned The Witcher. And then when you play Lightning Returns, it has none of that in there. And it's like, then why are you saying you looked at these games? I know what they did, because Square Enix, again, no offense to Japanese developers, they're up their ass, right? So unless you're Platinum Games, which they are not, and they're always like, well, they probably did this. We looked at those games and we don't like any of them, so we're going to do our own thing. And even though I played through Lightning Returns, not once but twice, because you have to play it through twice, because you can't beat Bonaveza the first time around. It's just fundamentally flawed all the way around. They got it all wrong. Here's an open world, but we're going to put this time limit, and you're going to go back to the dark, so you really don't have time to fully appreciate it or explore it or whatnot. It's incredible to me. Which is nice that the new Final Fantasy 15 is open world and allows you to do that. And again, this was Square's in my opinion, last ditch effort for them to, make it right, per se. And the only thing to me that held Lightning Returns even up was its combat and schemata switching, and the fact that Lightning is an interesting character. Even though she's kind of dull, she's still kind of an interesting character and her motivations. And for me, it was it's just, I don't know, I could look past some of that and play through it, but most of the time I was mainly tolerating it, so and I think that's the problem. When you start changing a game into something else, it's going to inevitably be compared to something else, and I think that's where the Zelda's problem is. I think critics that have been a little harsh on it, not where they're throwing it under the bus, they still like it, but I think where they've been critical of the game in that regard is because they're comparing it to those other games that's part of the same genre. Anyway, this has been episode 34 of the Gaming Roundtable, called Durability and Genre. You should check out this Let It Die. If you're a fan of Dark Souls or Bloodborne, any of those type of games, this shares a lot in common with it. It is completely 100% free to play, which is weird considering that the game is so fully realized. I'm shocked that they just didn't release it as a title and not free to play, but there you have it. It's still a pretty fun game, so definitely check it out. And because it's Suda51 and Grasshopper, and their games are just, I don't even know where he comes up with some of this shit. Real quick though, they did add this new multiplayer PvP mode that got added. I just unlocked it. It was in the game, but you have to unlock it, and you do it after you fight the first mid boss, which is really not all that hard to defeat, even though he can mess you up if you're not careful. But where it says KY, that's Kentucky. It actually has every state from the U.S. and then regions, and so it's my state. So and my group is for anyone that plays this game in my state, which is really cool. So I think that's really cool that they did that, and kudos. And Grasshopper, again, they're awesome. They made Shadows of the Damned, which is an excellent game. They made the Lollipop Chainsaw, one of my favorite games. Killer 7. That's a company that takes some crazy out of the concepts and just really runs with it. And they don't really give a damn about what anybody thinks. And it seems like everything they make is sometimes silly and sometimes crazy. It works. So definitely check it out. And I think you would enjoy that. Anyway, thanks for joining me in the Gaming Roundtable. Like I said, please subscribe to my channel. Tell your friends about me, and whoever is listening in right now, thank you for tuning into this broadcast. I hope you continue to do so. And as always, gamers, remember, I am the guy telling you the way it is. Good gaming.